one of the first church fathers whose books are still read today with great enthusiasm, St. Augustine of Hippo. Hippo is not short for hippopotamus. It's actually a city, a small city in northern, what today would be described as, I guess, Algeria. The Roman Empire, as we said, was very multi-ethnic, and they didn't really have the same kind of racial hangups that we do in North America today. So Hippo was, so Augustine was African, and he started out his life as a pagan, and he had all kinds of experiences, chasing women and drinking and getting into trouble. And then eventually he came around and became a Christian. And that process by which he went from being a louche, party guy to becoming a saint is described in his book, Confessions. He wrote a lot of things. He was a very, very prolific writer. A lot of his stuff survived. A lot of his stuff didn't. But he did. So he wrote about governance. He wrote about his life. He also wrote commentary on the Torah, and he wrote commentary on the Bible. And we're going to look at some of those in a moment. But he also established this. He had some hot takes on Jews that are going to come out in the story of Cain and Abel. Now, the story of Cain and Abel is a story we all know. It's the story of the first dysfunctional family in the Torah, in the Bible. Cain was a agricultural worker, a farmer. Abel was a pastoralist. He was a herder of sheep. And one day they came to offer their sacrifices to God, and God liked Abel's and didn't like Cain, and the rest is history. Let's have a look at how Augustine understood this story in his commentary on the story of Genesis. So we're going to go back into our handout. This comes to us from Jacob Marcus and Mark Saperstein's The Jews in Christian Europe. And I highlighted the relevant portion. So I'll just jump down to it and read from there. So again, what Augustine is going to do is he's going to look at the different pieces of the story, and he's going to say, well, I'm going to do like one of those Microsoft Word find and replace, where the text says Cain, I'm going to stick another word in there. And when the text says Abel, I'm going to stick another word in there, and then we're going to see what we have. So here's Augustine's writing. He says, as Cain's sacrifice of the fruit of the ground is rejected, while Abel's sacrifice of his sheep and the fat thereof is accepted, so the faith of the New Testament, praising God in the harmless service of grace, is preferred to the earthly observances of the Old Testament. So what Augustine is basically saying here is, if you think about Cain as being like the Jews, and the offering he's making is the Torah, then Abel's offering is better. It's the offering of the New Testament. And then what happens after God rejects Cain's offering? Cain gets upset, finds some excuse to get Abel out into the fields and kills him, and then hides the body. So then God says to Cain, where is the body? Where's your brother? And he's like, I don't know, am I my brother's keeper? The correct answer to that is always yes. But let's go back to Augustine. God asks Cain where his brother is, not as if he did not know, but as a judge asks a guilty criminal. Cain replies that he knows not, and that he is not his brother's keeper. And what answer can the Jews give today when we ask them with the voice of God, that is, of the sacred scriptures about Christ, except that they do not know the Christ that we speak of? So again, he's making this connection that the Jews are like Cain, and Abel is like Christ in the New Testament. And there was a clash, and God has some things to say about it. But here's the thing. We were all familiar with the figure of speech, the Midas Touch. Is that a positive or a negative thing? If someone says to you, hey, man, you got the Midas Touch, is that a compliment or an insult? Go like this if it's a compliment. Go like this if it's an insult.
We can't see you.
Yeah, go like what?
Thumbs up. Thumbs up if you think a Midas Touch is a good thing, and thumbs down if you think a Midas Touch is a bad thing. Okay, so you think, Sarah thinks it's a bad thing. Why?
I don't know. I'm just assuming that there's a trick somewhere.
There's no trick.
My bad. Yes.
Well, why do we think it's a good thing?
Well, if you wear gloves all the time, then you can, and like you wear full body robes, you can still give people hugs. And then when you take them off, you can touch things and they turn to gold. Why wouldn't you want that?
Right. So the reason why we think that he's amazing is because everything he touched turned to gold, until he tried to eat food, which turned to gold, or hug his daughter, which she turned to gold. So actually, there was, like, the moral of that story was, don't be so greedy, because that will be your undoing. Right? But over the years, that part of the story kind of fell away, and the part about him touching everything and turning it to gold became like, hey, that's an amazing thing. Especially if you're like, love capitalism, you're like, yeah, I can make money just by touching it. It's amazing. Now, here's the thing. What happens to Cain after he kills Abel? This is a part of the story people rarely talk about. What happens to him? Anyone can jump in here if they have the answer.
Wandering.
He's punished by wandering, but that's not but the thing is, what does he say when he's told he has to wander? He's worried about something.
Gadol avoni minso. Something like that.
Right. He's worried about the fact that he's sinned, but he's also worried that when people encounter him, they're going to murder him. They're going to take revenge on him for killing his brother. So what does God do?
What people? Wait,
Yes,
there.
stop. Okay.
The sign on his head.
Right. He puts the sign on his head. Now today, in modern parlance, the mark of Cain is considered a terrible thing. It's like a black mark on your record, like you're tainted, you're branded. It's like the Hester print with the A on her lapel. Mark of Cain is it's a terrible thing. But if you look in the text, actually the mark of Cain is a protection. It protects Cain from those that would come and kill him. If we jump down back to Augustine. So how does Augustine process this story? Cain murders Abel. Cain are the Jews. Abel is Jesus or the New Testament. God likes the New Testament better. The Jews now have to be punished. The land will spurn them. They will be rejected. They will wander. He says it. Here, no one can fail to see that in every land where the Jews are scattered, they mourn for the loss of their kingdom and are in terrified subjection to the immensely superior number of Christians. So much like God punishes Cain by making him wander the earth. Now again, Cain was a farmer. This is a terrible punishment for him. He can never do his job again. He has to wander from place to place, reviled and hated. And this is what Augustine says. This is what's going to happen to the Jews. It's the same thing. And not only that, you have to keep the Jews around. Let's look at the quote here. That is, it is not, as you say, not by bodily death shall the ungodly race of carnal Jews perish. For whoever destroys them in this way shall suffer sevenfold vengeance. That is, shall bring upon himself the sevenfold penalty under which the Jews lie for the crucifixion of Christ. So much like Cain was punished to wander the earth for eternity and be hated and yet protected, the same is true of the Jews. No emperor or monarch who finds under his government the people with this mark kills them. That is, makes them cease to be Jews, and as Jews to be separate in their observances. And unlike the rest of the world, only when a Jew comes over to Christ is he no longer Cain, nor goes out from the presence of God. So what Augustine is talking about here evolves into effectively what we call the doctrine of witness. This is especially true when in his commentary on Psalms, where in Psalm 59, we find this verse. Now, a lot of the Psalms, which are traditionally we believe to be written by David, although we're not sure. Let's just call the author of the Psalms the poet. A lot of what the poet writes are Psalms of thanksgiving, but a lot of the Psalms that the poet writes are also Psalms of like, God help me, people hate my guts, they're chasing after me, they say terrible things about me, help me out, God, save me from them. And in this particular psalm, he says what he would like God to do to his detractors, to his enemies. Do not kill them, lest my people be unmindful. With your power, with your power, make wanderers of them, bring them low, O our shield. So the idea here, again, is that Augustine reads this and he thinks, aha, see, I understand what the Bible is telling me. We have to keep the Jews around. We shouldn't kill them. We shouldn't persecute them. We should keep them around because their existence is proof that Jesus is correct and Christianity prevails.